What's up, everybody? Straw Hats Are Cool here, and we are back with another video. This week we're going to be starting off by jumping back onto the rank sim and playing some games with one of the new leaders from OP07. Today we're going to be taking a look at Jewelry Bonney. Before we get into today's video, as always, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who's been supporting the channel as of recently. We are starting to approach 2,500 subscribers, and that's a pretty big milestone hit. So if you are not already subscribed to the channel and you're enjoying the content, I would appreciate it if you smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. It's the best way you can help me out. We do have a Discord. If you're not already in that, link for it will be in the video description, with the official release of OP07 coming up this Friday. I'm hoping to potentially do a giveaway on some packs if I'm able to get my hands on them, so stay tuned for that. Will be more details if I get the packs in the Discord. And lastly, if you plan on buying any cards off of TCG Player, do consider using my affiliate link, as a small percentage of your purchase will go towards supporting the channel, and that's another way that you can help in supporting me. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into the deck breakdown. So today, as I already said, we're going to be taking a look at the new Jewelry Bonney leader from OP07. This is a standard monocolor leader with 5,000 light or 5,000 power and 5 life. It has a pretty unique effect that states when your opponent attacks once per turn, you may pay 1 Dawn and rest up to one of your opponent's leaders or characters. So by leaving 1 Dawn up at the end of your turn on your opponent's turn, you are able to essentially mitigate one of your opponent's attacks, and by resting either a character or their leader. One of the things that's really nice about this as well is one of the key strategies for a lot of decks, namely decks like Enel, is just start playing their big things and not attacking with them, so they can leave them active. You can't attack into them, just kind of keep them a little bit safer. But this effect on its own kind of prevents that strategy from working, because you're able to rest something every turn if your opponent wants to attack. And the thing about attacking is your opponent needs to do it if they want to win the game. So you're going to be able to use this effect often, and it is quite powerful. Well, so let's talk about the rest of the deck now. What else are we running with our Jewelry Bonney leader? Now, I was playing around with a couple different lists before settling on this one. I'm trying some different things out, so we'll of course also talk about other options for the deck. I think more or less what you're looking at here is pretty standard, with a couple exceptions, namely being the Luffy here and the Rosinante. We'll talk about more about those cards here in a little bit and why I'm running them. But for the most part, this is a pretty standard build. The only things that are really going to change here are ratios on some of the cards you already see here. The first card we've got here is a card that was introduced relatively recently in EB01. This is the 5-cost Cavendish. It is a 6,000 power character with 1,000 counter and an on-play and when attacking effect that states if your leader is Supernova type and you have no other Cavendish on the field, you get to set 2 Dawn as active. So this is great. On play, it essentially costs 3 so long as you don't have any other Cavendish out. Do be mindful of that. You definitely do not want to have 2 of these characters on your field, as you will not be able to get the effect once you have 2 of them on the field. But this card's absolutely incredible. When attacking as well, being able to set those 2 Dawn active can be really nice, especially later in the game. For example, if we play something like our 10-drop Doflamingo, we can attack with the Cavendish to set 2 active, and that allows us to leave some Dawn up for our leader effect even after we've dropped the Doflamingo, which is really strong. Also just can kind of extend plays earlier in the game by basically being a 3-cost on play, by setting those additional 2 Dawn active, so you can either develop some more board or buff some of your attacks. Just a very good versatile card, and it's got the Supernova typing, so it is searchable through Bonney. Next up, we've got Scratch Man Apu. This is another card that was introduced in EB01. It's another 2K counter. We've already got a Apu that is a 2K counter from Starter Deck 2, but this one's effect is quite a bit better than the one that was introduced in the Starter Deck. It's a 1-cost, 1000 power character, and as we already said, it's one of our 2K counters for the deck. It's got an on play that states we may rest up to one of our opponent's 2-cost or less characters. Now, while there are a lot less small blockers in the format as the game's gone on, we've kind of strayed further and further away from low cost blockers. However, there are still some that do see play. A couple of examples I can think of are the EB01 Shirahoshi, the 2-cost, and the Cerberus for the Gecko Moria deck. Some decks have been running that as another blocker they can play off of their leader effect, which can help a lot in the Black-Yellow Luffy matchup. So the Apu effect probably not going to come up too often, as your key targets are going to be those low-cost blockers, but it's just a nice little 1-cost option that might allow you to go for game in scenarios where you wouldn't otherwise be able to. Next up, we've got the Eustace Captain Kidd. This is one of our boss monsters for the deck, and one that I'm sure most of us are familiar with, especially if we've been playing the game recently. Eustace Captain Kidd is a card that's seen a lot of play in the mono green Uta deck. But he is an 8-cost, 8000 power character. Dawn ×1, opponent's turn. If this character is rested, your opponent has to attack Eustace Captain Kidd. So anything else on your board, including your leader, is protected. So long as this character is rested and has a Dawn on it, your opponent has to attack into it or KO it with an effect in order to be able to attack into anything else on your board. Also got the activate main. Once per turn, you may rest this character to play up to 1 3-cost or less from your hand. Really nice, as it allows us to rest the card as soon as we play it, and oftentimes we'll just be playing out a low-cost blocker like the Rosinante if we have one. He's the only low-cost blocker I'm running in my build of the deck, and that's one of the things where I think maybe you could run some things a little bit different, but we'll talk about that more towards the end of the deck breakdown. But just very good card in specific matchups. I think it's pretty good if Gecko Moria doesn't have the answer for it, as just being an 8-cost means that most of their 5-cost bodies aren't going to be doing a whole lot for them. Can be good in the Bonney mirror as well. The mirror is really annoying because you basically just take turns resting each other's things, but forcing them to attack into an 8k body does help a lot. But yeah, so just very good card, a lot of versatility, good in plenty of matchups. Just one of the best cards that green has in its arsenal. Next up, we've got another 2k counter. This one's going to be Viola. This is a 3-cost, 3000 power character, and it has a unique effect that states when opponent attacks, you may pay 2 Dawn and rest up to one of your opponent's Dawn. So this can be a pretty annoying card in the mirror, actually. You can play this out and start leaving up 3 Dawn, so 1 for your leader effect and 1 for this if you want. And in the Bonney mirror especially, it can be pretty helpful because now they need to start leaving up at least 2 Dawn. Otherwise, you're just going to be able to rest the Dawn that they set that they leave active, and they're not going to be able to use their effect. So it can be pretty annoying for them. But it's mostly just here as a 2k counter. You're not going to be playing it out too often. But it is one that can come up, so that's why we're running it. It's also Don Quixote Pirates type, which means it's searchable off of our Baby 5. Next up, we've got the Doflamingo, just another boss monster for the deck. Very powerful card, 10 cost, 10,000 power. A little bit weak stat line in comparison to some of the other boss monsters that we've seen introduced to the game. But the all-on-play effect more than makes up for it, allowing us to lock up 3 of our opponent's characters or leaders. So anything that's rested on the board, we can just say, well, you're not going to be using that on your next turn. And then we're developing a big body. Really good in like the Black-Yellow Luffy matchup. One of the only ways we're able to beat Law a lot of the time is if we're able to prolong the game long enough to start dropping down a couple of these. So very important card for the deck. One of the best boss monsters in green. We are only running 3 copies, and I do think you could be running 4, but it is searchable, so I think we can get away with just running the 3 copies. Our last 2K for the decks, we're only running 10 total here, is the Baby 5. It's a 1 cost, 1000 power character with a 2000 counter. And if it's on the field at the end of our turn, we can trash it and set up to 2 of our Dawn cards as active. So sometimes it can come up if potentially we need to have a way to set Dawn active so we can use our leader effect. Maybe if you play like a Eustace Captain Kidd on 9, you can pay 8 for Kidd, put 1 on him, rest him, play out the Baby 5. End of turn, you could trash this to set 2 Dawn active so that you've got Dawn up for your leader effect. It's not a play that's going to come up too often, but because we do want to be leaving Dawn up, it can be helpful. Other cases, you can just play this out early, maybe before you play your 10 drop Doflamingo. And again, it's just giving you a way to play big, high-costed characters and still allowing you to leave Dawn up for your leader. But like I said, it doesn't come up too often, but it is just another Don Quixote searchable 2K counter. Next up, we've got 2 copies of the secret rare Rosinante from OP04. This is a card that was seeing a lot of play in the early builds of Bonney over in the Asia in meta, but since then it's kind of fallen out of favor. I'm still opting to run 2 copies as I found it pretty powerful in helping us develop our board. This is an 8 cost, 8000 power character without counter. It is Don Quixote Pirates type, so searchable all for Baby 5. It's got 2 effects. The first one states that on our opponent's turn, if this character is rested, your active characters with an original cost of 5 cannot be KO'd by effects. So can be good protection for our 5 cost characters, and we are running quite a few of them. We've got the 4 Cavendish, a couple Bonney, and a couple Luffy as well, so only running 8. So maybe you could make the case that it's not worth running this, but I've still found it pretty helpful, so that's why we're running a couple copies of it. And then the second effect is on play, you can rest it to play a 5 cost green character card. So we can play out our Cavendish, which effectively makes this a 6 cost play since we'll get the 2 active from Cavendish's on play. And play out the Bonney to freeze one of your opponent's Dawn or characters. And then you can also play out the Luffy, which is one of the key combos, but we'll talk a little, well, one of the combos and reasons I'm running this card is because I'm running the Rosinante. We'll talk more about that one when we get to Luffy. We're also running the blocker Rosinante from OP05, 2 cost, 1000 power blocker, 1k counter, and on our opponent's turn, if one of our rested characters would be KO'd, we can trash this character instead to prevent the KO. So when we're able to play this off the Kidd in the black matchup or even the yellow matchup, feels really good. Means they can't Rygo it or remove it for free because we essentially get to block the KO effect with the Rosinante. And a lot of times that can just mean we get to protect or use this Captain Kidd. Do keep in mind it is only rested characters, so it cannot protect something that's active, but your rested characters are safe as long as you've got this on the board. We've been talking a little bit about this card already. This is the Baby 5 Searcher. It's a tap searcher, looks at the top 5 for Don Quixote Pirates type, and put the rest on the bottom. We're running a pretty even split between Don Quixote Pirates and Supernovas, so we are running both the searchers. Very rarely are you going to whiff with your searchers because you're running that pretty even split, and only a couple of the cards in the deck are not searchable. But speaking of non-searchable cards, we've got 3 copies of the Hody Jones, and I would love to have 4 copies of this card in my deck, but I wanted to try some things out and just didn't have the room for it, so we're only running the 3 copies. But this is one of your game-ending cards. It's a 7 cost, 8000 power character. It has Rush, and on play you can rest up to 2 of your opponent's characters and or Dawn. But in order to play this card, you do also have to take a life. If you don't have a life to take, You still get all the other upside of this card, but if you do have life left, you do have to take one in order to play this card out, which can make it hard to play at times, but most of the time it is just more than worth playing this card, even if you do have to take the life. Really good in the mirror, allows you to rest your opponent's Dawn and potentially start swinging your board without allowing them to tap down one of your characters or leaders. And this is one of the key cards in the red-purple Law matchup. I think you need to see this card pretty much on curve to even have a chance in that matchup. And for that reason alone, I think you could make the argument to run 4. I've been doing okay with the 3 copies, but you could probably cut the Rosinante and the Luffy's, put some other cards in, and bump this up to 4. But I wanted to try out the Rosinante and the Luffy, and so far it's been working out okay for me. But if you don't want to run them, completely understand. I think 4 copies of Hody Jones is really solid. Next up is a Rogue. This is a new card from OP07 that synergizes very well with the Bonney leader. It's 4 cost, 5,000 power character with 1,000 counter. It's got blocker, and at the end of our turn, we can set up to 1 Dawn card as active. So if we've got the Rogue out on the field, end of turn, we've always got a Dawn up for our Bonney leader effect. So every turn that this sticks, we're going to be able to get maximum value out of our Dawn and still have one up to use for our leader effect, with the exception if we attach all of our Dawn to characters. We can't set a Dawn active. If it's attached to character, it has to still be in the Dawn area. But if you've got any rested Dawn at the end of their turn, a Rogue is just going to allow you to put one of those active, and that just allows you to use your Bonney leader effect, which is really powerful, and it's just a blocker as well. So a lot of times this is a must answer character for your opponents, so they will be investing resources to get rid of this guy. Only running 2 copies of the new Jewelry Bonney SR. I think this card is solid, but it's also pretty situational. I think it's a 5 cost, 6,000 power character with 1,000 counter, and it's got a fairly unique on play effect that states we can keep one of our opponent's characters or Dawn do not become active during the refresh. Now, freezing a character is nothing new to the game. We've already seen effects like that with the already mentioned 10-drop Doflamingo. So in that sense, it's kind of like a mini Doflamingo, but it's a little bit unique in that you can also freeze one of your opponent's Dawn cards, which is where I think this card can really shine. Specifically in matchups like Black Yellow Luffy, you can play this and keep one of your opponent's Dawns rested in order to prevent their big 10 Dawn play. The big play for that Black Yellow Luffy is going to be 2 Dawn on leader when they're at 0, putting 2 things in their life, and then playing out the Gecko Moria. But if you keep one of their Dawn rested, they're not going to be able to make that play, which can, especially towards the late game, can prevent your opponent from getting good value out of their heals, as they're not able to play the Gecko Moria to get their kids back. And if they've already played out a lot of kids, there's a good chance they're running low on the kids in hand, so it might mean they're not able to really get any value out of their leader effect, which can a lot of times just win you the game. You can also play it out earlier, maybe when your opponent's on 6 Dawn, going into their 8 Dawn turn to stop a Gecko Moria play. So very versatile card, a lot of options with it, but I do think it's fairly situational still, so that's the reason we're only running the 2 copies. The other green SR from OP07 is absolutely phenomenal. This is the 6 cost Basil Hawkins, 7,000 power. If our leader's supernova type, it has blocker, so we get the blocker effect with the Bonney leader. And then it has a once per turn effect that states if this character would be removed from play. So this is not just limited to KO effects, this is bottom decking effects. Putting it into your life effects like Katakuri. Anything that would remove this card from the field will activate this effect, and it says that we can rest one of our opponent's characters instead. So if they would remove this, they would Gravity Blade it. If they would bring its cost down and try and KO it, if they would Katakuri it. Instead of letting this card leave the field, we can just say, nah, rest one of your characters instead, which is absolutely incredible. So most of the time, this card is going to stick. The only matchup that can really deal with this card relatively easily is Red Purple Law. And the reason they're able to do it and other decks aren't is because they are able to use their leader effect to remove it when everything is already rested. So they could just attack with whatever they got on board and then play out like a Gordon. Now, yes, they are playing out a Gordon, but it's going to go to the bottom of the deck in order to use its effect to bring its cost or power down. Now, granted, they would have to play 2 of them, but not a very big ask when they're able to run 8 copies of that card. So they could use 2 of them. They go to the bottom, so there's nothing on their board for us to rest since everything's already rested, and they're able to get around it that way. But he's basically safe from on-play effects, because if your opponent plays something with an on-play that would remove it, well, now you've got something to rest because they just played a new character. And that's something that I've seen a lot of people misplay with as I'm playing these games on the rank sim. They'll rest all their characters and then play a Lucci to try and get rid of it, and now there's a Lucci on the field, so I'm just going to rest that in order to prevent the KO effect. So just some things to keep in mind. Very sticky card, absolutely incredible, nice stat line as well. And like I said, the only deck that really can deal with it is the Law, but because it's 7,000 power, they have to invest pretty heavily in order to get rid of it, which just makes it absolutely incredible. Alright, now this is one of the weird cards I'm running, and if you don't want to run this, I completely understand, but I've been having fun with it, and you know what, at the end of the day, that's what matters, and I'm trying to have fun with the game, make content for you guys to enjoy, but at the end of the day, I still gotta be having fun too. So this is a new card from OP07 as well. It's a 5 cost, 6,000 power character with 1k counter. And it has an effect that states if you have 3 or more characters, your cost 3 or lower characters other than Monkey D. Luffy cannot be KO'd by opponent's effects. Now, on paper, this effect might sound completely useless, but because it does not say base cost 3 or less, it just says cost 3 or less. This means that if your opponent would do anything to reduce the cost of your characters, if in that moment they are 3 cost or less, they are safe. So let's say, for example, you've got 3 characters on field, one of them's Luffy, and they try to maybe KO your Cavendish, which is on the field. They do something like attack with their Rob Lucci leader, rest the stage, bring it down to a 2 cost, play the Rob Lucci to try and KO it. They can't, because Cavendish is now at a 2 cost, and all your 3 cost or less are protected from the Luffy, with the exception of Luffy. Now, this is where Corazon comes in, Rosinante. He says that all of your active base 5 cost characters cannot be KO'd by effects. So if the Luffy is active, the opponent cannot KO it unless they KO the Corazon first. And they can't KO anything else unless they KO the Luffy first. Now, let's think about the best removal effects in the game right now in black. I'm thinking Brook, Kaku, Rob Lucci. What do those things hit? They hit characters with a cost of 3 or less. So for all of those effects, they basically become useless if you've got this combo out. Now, granted, it is a 2-card combo, and you do have to have 3 things on the board. But if you've got these 2 cards in hand, Corazon can play out the Luffy, and then you've got the protection. He's rested. They have to remove the Corazon first. But then again, maybe they bring the Corazon down to a 3 cost. They can't KO it because of the Luffy effect. So they have to have some effect to KO your Corazon while it's more than 3 cost. So the big things we're looking out for here would be like the Stussy. Not a lot of the Lucci decks are even running that right now. I think most of them are opting for the Sabo. The Sabo is another one that has a way to get around this effect. If they reduce it down to a 5 cost with their Tempest Kick, they can KO it with the Sabo. So that's one of the cards we gotta look out for. So there are ways around it, but it can be really annoying for your opponent to deal with, and with black being really powerful, it's just kind of a funny, cute little combo that I've had fun playing with. It's come up a couple times. I'm not saying you're going to see it every time in the black matchup. I'm not saying you need to see it to win the black matchup, but it's kind of funny when it works, and that's why we're doing it. So anyways, I'm sorry for the kind of long explanation there on that one, but that's what the card does and kind of why we're running it. We've got the Bonney Searcher, very similar to Baby 5, just a tap searcher, top 5. We look for supernova type. Tap searchers are really nice, especially when we get to establish something like Kid out. We can just start using these every turn unless our opponent has some effect to remove them from play, since they won't be able to attack into them, and we just get insane card advantage that way. And then the last card we're running is 2 copies of Whoever Wins This War Becomes Justice. It's green's 0 cost event. I don't know why the green and yellow ones have such long names, but is what it is. So we get to trash a card and give plus 3,000 power to a leader or character, which is nice. And the trigger effect's also pretty nice as well, just allowing us to rest an opponent's 4 cost or less. Sometimes you'll trigger this against red purple law just to either stop an attack or rest something so you can attack into it. But for the most part, it's just a way to turn some of our dead cards in hand to counter, which is really nice. Now, like I said, we are going to talk about some other cards you can consider. And like I said, I think for the most part, the deck is pretty much what I showed you, with the exception of Corazon and Luffy. And all that you're really adjusting is ratios. The 2 biggest cards I think you need to consider are the 9 cost Roanoa Zoro. This is another boss monster for the deck. 9 cost, 9,000 power. When attacking, you can pay 1 to restand it. And activate main, you can pay 2 to restand it. So very thematic with the 3 sword style. You can essentially attack 3 times with this Zoro if you untap with it, which can be really good into yellow. Can be good in, I don't know, it's just a good game ender if your opponent doesn't have an answer for it. What is kind of frustrating about this card, though, is if your opponent has some way to remove it, you basically just wasted your whole turn. You spent 9 Dawn and they got rid of your whole play, and then you're really sad. I wanted to make room for this card, but because I was toying around with some other things, as you already saw, we did not have the room for it. But I do think you could definitely make the case to play 1 or 2 copies of this card. Excuse me. The other big one to consider is the Bartolomeo. This is a 3 cost, 4,000 power character, 1k counter. It has blocker, and your turn once per turn. If a character is rested from one of your own effects, draw 1 card and trash 1 card from your hand. So this is only a your turn effect, so the things that are going to be proccing this are going to be your searchers, since you have to rest them in order to get the search effect off. The Corazon will also trigger this, since he rests to his on-play effect to play out a character. Your Eustace Captain Kidd, activate main effect, he rests to play out a character. Those are all things that can activate this effect, and it just allows you to filter out some cards. But really the main reason we're running this is it's a blocker that we can play off of Eustace Captain Kidd, which is nice. It's supernova type, which means it's searchable. And the biggest thing is that it has 4,000 power, which means that in the red purple law matchup, they have to use some form of power reduction if they want to remove this for their leader effect. So unlike the other blocker, the Corazon that we're running, your opponent has to invest some sort of resource into bringing the cost down if they want to remove this, which is really nice, especially with red purple law being such a powerful deck in the format. There are a couple other cards I think you could try out. I was playing around with this one. I'm not saying it's good, but it was pretty funny. This is the OP07 Doflamingo. It's a 7 cost, 8,000 power character, and it's got a very similar effect to the Bonney herself. On play, once per turn, you can pay 1 Dawn and rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 6 or less. It's kind of funny when it sticks, especially in decks against decks like Red Purple Law, because if you leave 2 Dawn up, you can rest 2 things a turn now. And like I said, it's probably more funny than anything else, but I was having fun trying it out. But I did ultimately end up cutting it because I wanted to make room for the Corazon, which I think has been a little bit better, which makes sense. But I don't know, I think this is something you could definitely play around with. You also got the X-Drake, another Supernova searchable card with a cost of 5, so you could play this off of your Rosinante if you want to go harder into the 8 cost Rosinante build. And it lets you KO a 4 cost or less, which is really nice in matchups like Red Purple Law. We're hearing that one a lot because it's one of the most relevant decks in the current format. Theoretically, you could also run something like the Ryuma, but that one doesn't have counter and it's not searchable. So I think if you're going to run something, you're probably running the X-Drake. It's got counter. You can play it off the Rosinante. It's searchable. It's just got more going for it. I just don't think there's room in the deck for this card, but if you want to toy around with it, you can. We've got Scratch Mana Poo as another Supernova 2k counter. I think generally you've got a higher density of Supernova cards already in your deck, so you're probably going to be maximizing on your Don Quixote type 2Ks in order to give you more searchable Don Quixote Pirates type cards. But if you want to go a little bit heavier into the Supernova side of things, this is another 2k counter option you have available to you. And lastly, you've got the 5 cost Trafalgar Law from Starter Deck 2. 5 cost, 6,000 power, 1k counter, just like X-Drake. Our Cavendish, just another 5 cost character. And on play, we can set up to one of our Supernova or Heart Pirates type rested characters with a cost of 5 or less as active. I don't think you need to run this card, but you can do some cute things if you've got like a Cavendish on the field. And then you definitely need to be going a little bit harder into your 5 cost Supernovas if you're going to try and run this. But for example, if you've got the Cavendish out, you could put some Dawn on the Cavendish, swing with it, restand some Dawn, play this, restand the Cavendish, attack again, restand some more Dawn, and get some cute plays like that. I don't think you'd ever run more than 1 or 2 copies, but it could be a cute little card you run to help you close out the game. But that's it for the deck list, deck profile, card by card breakdown. This list has been doing pretty well for me. At the time of this recording, I've played 15 games, and we've struggled a little bit against Red Purple Law, but the first couple games I played with it, I wasn't quite sure how to play into the deck, and so we lost pretty horrendously. But I've learned a couple tips and tricks now at this point in order to make the matchup manageable if you see the right things. So we've been doing a little better into it, but I think the deck is very solid and has a lot of potential in the OP07 format. Biggest downside with it though is it does, like I said, struggle into the Red Purple Law, but I think other than Law, it has a very solid matchup spread. Nothing else is super miserable matchup. I don't think the Boa Hancock matchup's great either, as they can just red rock everything and you're sad. But outside of those two, I think it has a very kind of even matchup or favored matchup into just about everything else. I think it has a really good Black Yellow Luffy matchup. But that's it for the deck list. I've been talking enough about it. I know most of you are just skipping to the gameplay anyways, but if you stuck around and listened to the deck profile and listen to me ramble a bit, I do appreciate it. But with all that said, let's go ahead and jump right into the ranked gameplay. Alright, up against the Red Purple Law. Not the matchup we want for sure, but this is not the hand we want. Got the Hody Jones, which is, we've got the cards we want and we're going second. So we'll see if we can make something happen here, work some magic. Hody Jones is really important in this matchup, so maybe for that reason alone I should be playing 4 copies, since this is one of, if not the most prevalent deck in the upcoming format. I think Black Yellow Luffy will definitely be up there as well. So they're just swinging 7 and passing. We're not going to be attacking into them because we want to limit their resources as much as possible until we can start winning board. We lose this game. Ah, they ripped the Hody. So that's not great. Things have gotten substantially worse already. But we're still going to try and make it work. They didn't remove the Aruj on the spot, so maybe there's a chance we can still win board here. We'll take the free block. Play the Miss all Sunday, as well as a Gordon. Gonna be getting rid of that Erogue now. Makes sense. Unfortunately, the Hody Jones is not searchable. I think we're gonna swing into the Law here. And this card does nothing in this matchup, but we still might. I think we're just gonna play it out to develop another body. Force them to have another Gordon here, which they probably do, but playing out the Searchers doesn't help us much here. We can 10 drop potentially next turn. Still got 4 life as well. We want to rest a queen. I think we just want to stop as many attacks as we can here. I will take that one though, another Doflamingo. There's another Hody Jones. They did not have the answer for the Luffy. I'm just going to be playing out the Sachi Penguin. But they didn't even get the effect off, I don't think. But I'm not sure why they would choose to do that. I think we just play the Doflamingo here. Establish a big body. Just attack into their characters. Let it go. And then we can play Goofy to lock up those 3. We're gonna pass, still not attacking into them. I think we're in about the best position we could be in this matchup. They got another queen. Very solid. Keeping a pretty decent hand size, which could be problematic. May try playing out the Eustace here. I doubt it'll stick, but it's worth a shot, I think. So I'm gonna take this one. They don't use their leader effect. We get another Doflamingo, which is interesting. Let's see kind of how they respond to me attacking into their characters. I will block that one. Let it go. Back into one of the queens. Let it go. So in that case, I'm just going to do another Doflamingo to lock up their board. Got another queen. Lots of queens from the opponent. Surely they've got some Gordons in hand. Could potentially clean up my board. Kid Killer maybe coming out. Bond Clay is pretty good. 2 Bond Clays is really good. And a pass. It's not great. For sure. Playing the Hody is risky because I'm at, I'll be going down to nothing. But I think I kind of have to. I do have the blocker, but I cannot let these guys stick around, I don't think. We're gonna have to try and make this work. Block and counter. Back into the queens. And then we'll pass here. About the best we can do. Use leader effect here. They've got Kid Killer, that's rough. I'm debating just blocking this because if they've got the Gordons, which they probably do, it doesn't really change anything. I think we can... Well, actually, we've only got a couple 2Ks. I don't know if we could counter out. We could go 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Play that out for 3. Too big. They got the Reiju to draw some cards. Another Reiju to draw some cards. Filling their hand. Now that we can play Eustace. Which could keep us in the game a little while longer. I have to imagine they've got the reduction, but if we can establish another blocker, he's not really a blocker, but he's a blocker. We'll swing 6 into the Sachi Penguin, 5 into Sachi Penguin, 8 into Sachi Penguin. 10 life. 10 life. Play Eustace over the Luffy. We're not going to be playing anything out. Then we'll pass it back. They are on 10 Dawn, which is not something you see every day from the Red Purple Law. 8 cards in hand. But there's like the 4th queen. Gordon. On the... Yep, playing out a 2K though. To get the bottom deck him. There's Kid Killer. Alright. They've already leader effect. That's going to be 7. I think I rest the queen and I have to go for game here. Do I have enough? That's going to be probably maybe 6, 6, 6. We're good. 7, 6, 5. We should be good. I think I am going to use that to rest the queen. Maybe I messed that up. Did I mess that up? think I have the math with the blocker. And now we just have to go for it, but I think there's a good chance we can get it here. 9, 11, 11. Yeah, we were able to get it. So very close game there in the end. Red Purple Law is by far the deck's worst matchup. I think this is the second time I've managed to beat a Red Purple Law, but I have learned a couple things. Don't attack into them early, and you need the Hody Jones. I think the Hody Jones is crucial because you need to win board, and really the only way you're going to do that is if you can go Basil Hawkins into Hody Jones and still have some life left. It's about the only way you can do it, and even then it's a little rough. Basil Hawkins is a little sticky, but what's annoying is that with the Gordons that go to the bottom of their deck, if they rest everything because the Gordon leaves play to do the reduction, oftentimes they have nothing on board for us to rest, which means we can't use his effect to protect it. But very clean win there, very close, but we were able to get there. GG's to my opponent.